So the government has resorted to McCarthyism. That's what we saw here today. Absolutely unbelievable. But I suppose it's not surprising that you would have adopted the tactics of the Cold War merchants of the United States who sought to actively crank up inter-imperialist rivalry to the terrifying level that at one point we were on the brink of a nuclear war over Cuba. And those are the stakes. And you see, you should be honest where you stand in that very, very frightening new international security framework, to use your phrase. But let me be clear about our position, because it is crystal clear and it is crystal consistent. Neither Washington nor Moscow, neither London nor Beijing. We oppose all these empires and these imperial military blocs equally as much. And we have a record of it which frankly is very, very much better than yours. Fianna Fáil leaders have gone over and hobnobbed with Putin. We never have. In fact, we've comrades who are languishing in Russian prisons at the moment because they oppose Putin's bloody war in Ukraine. We just don't happen to believe escalating that conflict to the point of a possible nuclear war is a very, very good idea. We think it's terrifyingly dangerous. But we are absolutely consistent, unlike yourselves. And you see, what's absolutely missing in the government's amendment on this, and in your characterisation of the new international situation that allows you to abandon solemn commitments made in your manifestos, in the Dole, in the programme for government, that you would retain the triple lock. Your justification for that is the new international framework, but the only thing you mention is the Russian invasion of Ukraine in your amendment. Not a word about the very obvious other new context for this, which is that the powers that dominate NATO are the ones that are arming to the teeth the state that is committing a genocide in Gaza, and that even now refuse to say that the action that Israel took in killing 45 people in Rafah in a bombing of people languishing in tents who'd fled from other parts of Gaza, and Biden says, this doesn't breach my red line. Now, I think Putin is a monster and a tyrant, and by the way, I said this in the Dole long before you ever used words like that about Putin. But what sort of monster and tyrant doesn't think the slaughter of innocent people in tents who fled to Rafah from other places is not equally a monster and a tyrant? But no mention of that. Or a regime that was capable of killing directly and indirectly 1 million people in Iraq based on a pack of lies concocted about weapons of mass destruction. But yous were silent about that, and you allowed 2 million troops to go through Shannon Airport to prosecute that slaughter, those criminal actions based on a pack of lies. So we're consistent. We oppose war, we oppose empires. And that is what Irish people feel about neutrality, because we were victims of empires and therefore we should not align with them. We should stand with the oppressed of the world against these warmongering powers and empires. And as well as the breaches of your promises in your manifesto, statements here in the Dole, I want to draw your attention to what is possibly a legal impediment to you doing what you want to do in terms of getting rid of the triple lock and abandoning further our neutrality, which are the national declarations that were made at the times of Nice II and Lisbon II. Those national declarations were lodged with the EU in advance of those repeat referendums in order to assure the Irish public that under no circumstances would the triple lock be abandoned. So they weren't just verbal commitments, they were lodged with the EU. So arguably, if you attempt to bring this legislation through, you are in breach of international law. So think about that one, as well as just the moral bankruptcy of saying one thing to people before an election and then abandoning it afterwards. And there's absolutely, as Deputy Murphy has laid out forensically earlier on, there is absolutely nothing in current legislation or in the triple lock that prevents us doing humanitarian missions or any missions which would be genuinely about peacekeeping missions. But what we do insist is that there is a constraint on the government that should be in our constitution that prevents you from deploying the sons and daughters of working class people to wars headed up by powers like the United States or Britain or France or Germany. The states that are, to repeat, complicit and up to their neck in the Israeli genocide in Gaza. That horror that we are witnessing could be turned off like that. If the United States stopped arming them, Britain stopped arming them, Germany stopped arming them. And you want us, you suggest that Putin's invasion of Ukraine is a reason we should ally ourselves with powers like that. No, the opposite is the case. Putin's invasion of Ukraine is the reason we should never have anything to do with these bloody imperial powers. And just to repeat, you know, we stood with the Afghani people when Russia invaded Afghanistan. That was a bloody, horrific war. We stood and protested with the people of Chechnya when Russia launched a bloody, murderous assault on the people of Chechnya. We stood with the people in Hong Kong when they fought for democracy against the crushing by the Chinese regime of their democracy. We stand with the people of Tibet against the Chinese regime. But by the very same token, we stand with all oppressed people. We stand with the Palestinians. We stand with the people of Yemen when they're being slaughtered by the Saudi regime, armed by the United States. We stand with people in Latin America who time and time again were the victims of the United States believing that South America was their backyard and that they were willing to arm militias in order to undermine democratic governments and movements in El Salvador, in Nicaragua, and so on. That's a consistent foreign policy. And that is what I think the people want, and it would be an absolute betrayal of Irish neutrality, of our entire history of resistance and opposition to empire and colonialism, for you to do what you're trying to do, as well as very possibly a breach of solemn commitments, legal commitments made in advance of the Nice and Lisbon II referendums. So you've been called out. It's interesting that Taoiseach said we provoke them. We provoke you. We provoke you because we remind you of the facts and we cut through the dishonest narrative you've used to justify your moves away from neutrality.
Thank you.